After Loki Episode 4, the Nexus event ended with a shocking cliffhanger, the wait for Episode 5 was excruciating. But now the latest installment, Journey into Mystery, has arrived, and with it, some big questions. Here's the ending of Loki Episode 5 explained. It's established very quickly, thanks to a forced confession from Judge Renslayer to Sylvie, that the TVA's pruning batons don't actually kill variants. Instead, they transport them to a place in time called the Void, where they can be vaporized by a malevolent smoky force called Alioth. The Void's existence is obviously a highly classified TVA secret, which is why Loki didn't learn about it when he was asking for files from the clerk back in Episode 2. In Marvel Comics, Alioth is closely tied to a notorious time-traveling villain who many fans are expecting to see very soon in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, Kang the Conqueror, and he's reportedly being played by Lovecraft Country star Jonathan Majors. The big smoky beast had his own temporal empire when he was originally introduced back in 1993's Avengers: The Terminatrix Objective No. 1. But Kang constructed a time barrier to keep the villain out of his own domain called Chronopolis. That doesn't sound too dissimilar to what the TVA has done with Alioth and Loki, trapping the entity in the Void so they can use him to wipe out pesky variants and other things that don't belong in the sacred timeline. The bulk of the episode follows our main Loki chatting with the other variants and discovering what makes them so different from himself, all while trying to find a way to defeat Alioth and figure out who's really behind the TVA. The episode doesn't rush through things, giving this God Squad plenty of time to bounce off one another, all while expanding the mythology and development of everyone's favorite god of mischief. Classic Loki explains how he lived past the events of Avengers: Infinity War. He reveals that he conjured an illusion of himself so exacting that he fooled Thanos into thinking the decoy was real and that he'd killed Loki. From there, Classic Loki went into hiding as inanimate debris, cowardly and smart. Yes, that's Classic Loki all right. But not only is it an insightful anecdote as to what Lokis are capable of when they put their mind to it, it's also a clue as to how the vibrantly dressed character will have an impact in the final fight against Alioth. It all ends in a big scuffle when a variant we'll call President Loki shows up with an army of other variant Lokis from across the Void's wasteland. However, they all start betraying each other, because that's just what Lokis do, isn't it? At this point, it looks like the small appearance from President Loki might debunk a few of those theories suggesting that he's the one behind the TVA. It's still not impossible, but it's highly unlikely. They just couldn't stay apart for too long, could they? Sylvie follows Loki to the Void after Renslayer reveals that the Void is a place at the end of the timeline. That means it's out of harm's way and can't affect past events. Sylvie's self-pruning shows that the variant clearly cares as deeply for the main Loki as he cares for her. Her main motivation is finding out who's really behind the TVA, but she's just not very good at expressing her emotions. This is something that comes across very clearly in a touching moment leading up to the final battle. While Kid, Classic, and Gator Loki shelter in a hollowed-out building with Mobius, Loki and Sylvie huddle together in a conjured blanket while they try to untangle the romantic mess they've created for themselves. It's clearly the first time Sylvie has ever let herself be vulnerable with anyone, so it's quite fitting that she's opening up to an alternate version of herself, but she even struggles to connect with Loki.
I didn't have friends. I don't have anyone.
Finally, Loki gets his own redemption arc as he promises not to betray Sylvie. He hugs Mobius and calls him a friend before the TVA agent heads back to work to burn it down. Loki and Sylvie head off to face Alioth themselves while the rest of the God Squad decides to stay in the Void. After all, this is their home now. Thankfully, Sylvie vetoes Loki's simple plan of trying to stab a smoke monster and goes with her idea of enchanting the creature and revealing where and who the person behind the TVA is. However, just because she's been nefariously murderous up to this point doesn't mean she can't inspire Loki to have a little faith in himself. He unlocks his own enchanting abilities just in the nick of time on the battlefield with a little encouragement from Sylvie. Thankfully, Classic Loki decides to give his life glorious purpose by creating a fake Asgard to distract Alioth. It's a brilliant moment to witness, especially for an older, bitter version of the character to finally feel like he's doing something positive in the timeline rather than constantly being a villain. His trickery succeeds, but at the cost of his life. However, Classic Loki points out earlier on that he cheated death by conjuring a fake version of himself during the confrontation with Thanos, so who knows. Once Alioth is enchanted, the smoke clears to show a bizarre castle or manor in the middle of a swirling cosmic background. With all the Kang the Conqueror connections to Alioth, is it possible that this is Chronopolis? Alioth clearly couldn't get inside it. In the comics, Chronopolis lies on the outskirts of Limbo and contains time points to places under Kang's control. Will we see Jonathan Majors as Kang next week in the Loki finale? Only time will tell. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about Loki are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.